Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and we have one more month left of the OP05 format for the English version of the One Piece card game. And to kind of celebrate that and transition into the OP06 meta, I wanted to make one more video going over Sakazuki in this meta and just kind of black in general as a color, as well as going into the OP06 meta, where I think it's going to be doing not only Sakazuki specifically, but black as a color is going to be doing very good in that format, especially looking at the OP06 results for Asia as well. So this is an opinion piece, which I don't do as often. I usually try to do more just event breakdowns and stuff. So to kind of clarify that, this is an opinion piece. It's to reflect on data and present my opinions on the meta for that kind of stuff, and just kind of compile it for you guys to get an easy source for it. It's not a call in action for Bandai or not anything for complaining. Again, just an opinion piece, and it's my opinion, and I highly recommend you can take the data and inform your own opinions for it. So I'm not saying mine's the end all be all, but these are my thoughts going into the end of OP05 and going into OP06. So some quick and fast data for you guys. We had pretty much 6 large English events across the world, which we have all of them on my website, Eggman Events, if you guys want to check them out in general. We don't have the Latin American tournament data finals, or finals tournament data as of right now as a recording. It's happened like a week and a half ago, but we haven't got the data for it. As soon as I get it, I'll make sure to publish it on my website, but that is probably like the one big event that no one really has the data for, again, outside of the TOs as of this recording. But 6 large events, 4 of them did have a top 16 kind of top cut, and the other ones were large enough to have the top 64, so that being the English or the North American and the European finals that happened the last couple weeks. So based off that though, just from topping for the 16-person events, that's 28 out of 64. So about 44% of it was Sakazuki. And then for the 64-player tops, we do have 60 out of 128, so approximately 47%. So in general, around 45% of the meta for the top cut of this meta itself were Sakazuki's. And when it went to tournament wins for this, there were 2 Sakazuki's, 2 Nell, and 2 Purple Luffy, with Purple Luffy also winning the Latin American final. So technically, Purple Luffy in this meta, based off those 7 events, is the most winning leader of them. So it's not Sakazuki on that side. But honestly, just kind of pretty even between the 3 of them, which is really interesting. But so that's kind of the data there, that Sakazuki is probably the front runner, at least for topping in this format, but not necessarily winning. And then also just, we don't have this for every event either, but for the 4 events that I was able to get kind of a leader or meta breakdown, Sakazuki was polling around 30, a third of the decks in the room at a given time were probably Sakazuki based on it. So it was, 33%, 34% of the meta, but then when you went to a top cut, it was getting about 45. So a pretty good conversion rate for doing that as well throughout the entirety of OP05. We do have a couple more events here in the English version for Treasure Cups for February, but I just kind of want to go over this now as it were. So that is kind of what it looks like. So I think it's pretty clear in my mind that Sakazuki is doing, it's the most popular leader that people are bringing to these events, and it's still overcoming its popularity when it comes to topping these events more times than not. So I think that's pretty straightforward from there. I also do want to say that OP06, you get new support for the deck, specifically the set of the deck, but also for kind of black and blue in general. We get this Tashigi searcher, which I don't know why they gave the deck another searcher. So we have this Tashigi that could be able to find brand new, that we could play brand new, etc. We have this Gecko Moria, which this card is really silly too, and to have no restrictions on really anything, and like it doesn't even restrict the colors of the cards you play. So on play, choose up to 1 cost 4 or less, and up to 1 cost 2 or less character from your trash, play one of them, and then play the remaining rested. So you're able to do some pretty sick combos with some cards we'll even talk about later. But one card that plays 2, and then even like you can get like a Rebecca that lets you get something and play something, and you can get like a brand new. You can even get like Tashigi, it's the same thing, so it lets you draw a card. It's just silly. There's just a silly amount of value that this Gecko Mori gets to use, especially in Sakazuki, since you are putting cards in your trash from your hand already. And then we have this Ama no Murakumo, which is an event. It's a 2 cost. It's pretty much Rob Lucci, where return up to one of your opponents cost 2 or lower, and up to one of their opponents cost 1 or lower characters to the bottom of their deck in any order. So it also bottom decks it, so it gets around like Borsalino and that kind of stuff. Doesn't proc on KO effects. and it is searchable since it is a navy type, which I can kind of show right there. Bam. So these are just more support cards that this deck gets, which honestly I don't think it needed. But it's also just going to help the consistency and just the power of the deck overall, which is kind of scary when you really think about it. So for Asia, I was able to get some good data too. Shouts to Noah. Make sure to follow them. I'm going to put a link to their YouTube in the description. They do a lot of good data for the Asian meta, and I wouldn't be able to make this section without them. So they did have some championship series qualifiers with it was pretty much like the regionals that we have here. Of them, Moria, and we're kind of switching to Moria as well, which is kind of like the addition to Sakazuki right now in OP06, but it's 22 out of the spots, and so like you can see Moria and Sakazuki taking pretty much over 50% of this meta, and then also there's Perona, which is kind of like a half and half lead. It's kind of like pretty similar to Sakazuki with it being green and black. It's kind of like an in-between of like Gecko Moria and Sakazuki in a lot of ways, but being able to have that leader be present too is pretty strong. So all three of those taking like pretty much 2/3 of the top cuts moving forward, and then we just see some yellow decks and just some additional reds and stuff. So that's kind of what they saw in Asia, and then kind of they had some card fest as well. So this is another slide that kind of added to that. So Katakuri able to overcome Sakazuki with 17-16, but again, like Gecko Moria and Sakazuki, and just kind of the engine that they're running most of the time is just doing really, really good in Japan or Asia in general, which is kind of what I wanted to say. So all I'm just kind of trying to say with this one is that it's clear to me that Sakazuki is very good in this meta, and then it's going to be kind of shifted to Gecko Moria into the next meta. Sakazuki is still powerful, but I wonder if the question I'm posing for you guys is it an issue with Sakazuki specifically, or is it more of just kind of like the support cards that Black has gotten and are continuing to get in OP06 as well? So these are kind of like the 4 cards that I think most people kind of pinpoint as the above average cards, the strength cards in Sakazuki, and Rebecca and Rob Lucci specifically can be put in Gecko Moria too, and is usually put in there for that additional advantage too. But real quick, my thoughts on these 4 cards. The leader Sakazuki in general, the kind of broken part about him is that neither of his effects use Dawn. You can use them both for free, which means that you're able to use the effects and then still play something on curve, which means that if you have 4 Dawn, you can still play at 4 cost and use both of these effects, which is pretty crazy. Being able to get a draw 1, discard 1 is really good in this game, where there could just be very dead cards in your hand. It lets you play a little bit greedier, and it also means that there are cards that are dependent of cards in trash for the archetype and for Black in general. So being able to set up cards in your trash and also like get a cycle for it is really great for this deck. So you don't even lose card advantage. You just get to put a card into your trash for more than free, and it's very good. And then the fact that this leader is really generic and it doesn't really have any restrictions. It goes with the navy stuff because that's pretty much what's popular for Black and Blue, but it's great. There's just a lot of stuff that works with this leader because it is so generic, and there's not really a cost for anything that he does besides being a 4 life leader, which most cases, that's sometimes a really high hill to overcome, but I think Sakazuki overcomes it pretty easy. So that's my thoughts on the leader. And then Hound Blaze, really it's only broken when you pair it with cost reduction, which is only possible with Sakazuki and Rebecca. So outside of those 2 leaders, I think this card is actually okay. It's like a soft restricted card to Black and Blue until like more colors that get cost reduction, but I don't think it's that terrible of a card. It gets a lot of pressure, specifically in Sakazuki, and so if people find that that's too much pressure and they limit this card to 1 or something, I don't know. I'm not really calling for that right now. I do dislike seeing my opponent just being able to clear my board and be able to pressure me with this card. So it's a little silly from that point. It's overtuned. I won't deny that, but it's still, I don't know. It's luckily if this was running rampant in blue in general or Black in general, like if this was a Black card, it would be way worse because you'd be able to easily get your cost reductions with it. But as a blue card, and again like the soft restriction, it's fine. It's not my favorite card to have played against me, but it's what it is. So I'm not too worried about that. And then so we have Rob Lucci, which can be played for free off Gecko Moria. So that's some future synergy with those there too. But Its effect is only present in the early game, like the cost for it. It's pretty easy, especially with Sakazuki, if you're cycling one every turn, to get that many cards into your trash that Rob Lucci doesn't even really pay a cost for it. It gets a lot of free advantage because you're able to even just do like a simple 2-for-1. And like if you use your leader attack from Sakazuki, you can attack, make a 3 cost 2, and then you play Rob Lucci and you get rid of it. So that's good. And it's overstated, to be honest. Like this could have been a 4-drop 5K with no counter, and I think it still would have been just as good. The fact that it's a 6K and most leaders have to invest Dawn just to pressure this card down is real unfortunate, especially since you already get the advantage just by playing it in the first place. So he's a little bit of a trouble. I think I don't know. It's really tough to say how good this card is outright. He does pair very well with cards that get additional cost reduction, and you can get some very free removal for it. Maybe it should have been 1 and 0 or less, but I don't know. I don't know the best way to address this card. It's probably fine. I know that's meant for the Cypher Pole archetype, which means that they get cards into their trash for free, like Air Door to play into this is probably the original idea of why it's kind of worded and statted the way it is. But man, it does so good in Sakazuki and just other black leaders too. Like I've played in Smoker a lot too, and honestly, like there are a lot of really good black leaders right now, but you have to ask this question, like, am I able to do better with this leader than Sakazuki? And more times than not, the answer is no. Sakazuki is just better. He gets better leader effects, and if you're good enough at the game, 4 life doesn't even matter. You can end game with 2 or 1 life pretty easily too. So I think the leader I think this card is fine-ish. It's probably a little bit overstated. I think it's probably going to get humbled in a little bit, but it is really obnoxious in the same way. And then Rebecca, this card I think is the biggest demon of them all. The fact that it doesn't have a cost, no cost or restriction on effect is just silly. It should depend on either this card probably should have been locked to Rebecca as a leader or a Dressrosa leader. Additionally, this maybe there should have been a thing where you had to check cards in your trash or bottom deck cards at least, but neither of those exist. You just get to play it. Worst case, it's a 4-drop blocker, which as a blocker does not really matter how much power you have outside of red, which isn't super duper present right now. It's not at least at the top tables consistently. And then being able to just defend whatever card you played and get that value from it. It just gets so good with it, which is effects. It just gets you so much value that I think it's just a little bit silly. And then this is also a card you can play off Gecko Moria, so you can play this 8 cost. You play Rebecca and let's say a 2 draw brand new from your trash, and then you can use Rebecca's effect to play Tashigi or something like that. There's just so many combos where you play this Moria and then you play 3 cards and then you also draw a card with Rebecca. It's absurd. It's so absurd when that kind of chain goes off with it, and I think it's going to be kind of unrivaled for tempo plays in the near future. So it's I think something, if anything of these 4 cards, I think Rebecca's on my list of the top of it. That's something probably needs to happen with this one. Otherwise, just again black gets just so much value from the recycling from this, the being able to just keep doing it over and over again. And again, you never run out of cost. And worst case, playing 4 for a blocker is not terrible in this game either. So that's my thoughts there for those cards. They're all just really just overtuned just a little bit. Nothing too broken in my mind outside of Rebecca. But since they all kind of exist in the same deck at the same time, that's what kind of pushes it to the edge a little bit in my mind. All right, and so I also want to say, if anything does get affected or anything, I am super aware that there's a power vacuum. If we went up to the OPO6 leaders and stuff, yellow is pretty present for what it was doing and where it was. So it's not too surprising to me that yellow will be the best deck if anything happens to these guys. So that's something that we have to be aware of essentially. And I am aware that you can't just remove a deck and think that the best deck in the game is removed. The meta is solved. There's a good chance that the next best deck is even worse for the meta. So I just want to just clarify that I do understand that fact and that opinion for it, and that's just something that's very present for card games in general. Where what's the next boogeyman now that we removed the previous one? So In general, I do think that black is pretty overtuned in this card game in OPO5 and will continue, if not accelerate it into OPO6, just based off the data that we have for current meta in OPO5 and looking forward to the OPO6 meta. And that kind of also, I know I'm just going up the slides, but we see that like as we go on, like Mori is just doing really good and being able to do this. And kind of like what it happens for us here in the NA region is that we see the end of the format where most of the decks are kind of optimized already by Asia. And then we just continue to run the meta that they had at the end of their meta. So we get a really accelerated meta based on them, and because of that too, there could just be a lot of times where, like, look, there's 6 Sakazukis in this last one that happened, right? 6 Sakazukis, 3 Morias, and 3 Peronas, right? Like, there's only 3 Katakuris and a green yellow Yamato outside of that. So it's just yellow and black for like that last event, and I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of ends up being what the meta looks like at the first couple weeks here in NA. So I will say that black, when it was released about a year ago in OPO2, it was pretty lackluster. A lot of the stuff was undertuned or cost too much for the effects to work. And now that we have all these resource generations, all these ways to get these nice little +1s and get rid of stuff on your opponent's board, I think it's kind of like rebounded to maybe overtuned. So I think that might be why the balancing is maybe like it is. Not a lot of people are playing black, so they're like, all right, cool, we'll give it this really good archetype and some really good support cards, and maybe they were just a little bit too good for what they are. And just the resource recycling and just the flexibility makes the deck very strong, and just the kind of the color identity for what it is right now. And the last thing is that the solace I do get for it is that as strong as these decks can be at sometimes, I do think they do have skill in decision making kind of baked in. It's not a deck that you can just kind of walk towards victory. You need to make sure you have the path for it. You have to make the decisions and make the correct decisions. I think the best player in the room will be playing this deck and do well with it, but I don't think a lot of people who know it's the best deck but are trying it out, they'll find it's not as easy as it look like. So that's like the one point of solitude. It reminds me like when Trafalgar Law was best deck in format, or one of the best decks in the format, was that yes, the builds are usually understood for it and the deck is very strong, it can do a lot of things, but your opponent has to have the foresight and the knowledge of how to play the deck optimally to get there, right? Without that knowledge, you don't make the deck look as broken as it really is. So that's, again, like the one solace for it. It's not something that, you can just build a 50 and win every game with it. There is a lot of thought that goes into it, which I think is at least good for a card game like this one. So anyways, I don't really have much more to say. I know this is a big rant for what it is. In general, I think it's just obvious that it's the best color in the game right now. It will probably be an OPO6, and if it's going to get oppressive or more oppressive, I think something probably should happen to it. But I'm not sure what that's going to be or if that's going to happen. But I just that's just my thoughts in general. So anyways, that's the video for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think about the deck and going into OPO6 as well. And that's going to be it for me. So thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.